Parsimonious Piper here. It's a rainy day in North Carolina. Today, our menu is morsels for mental manducation. But first, I've got some Milan Tobacconist 401 Burley, one of their house blends, in a 1950-ish Briar Lee stroller. It's not quite a bulldog. You'll see that the stem is actually, technically it's a hexagon, but it's more triangular in general shape than diamond shape, but it's close. It's a nice little pipe. And if you like Burley blends, this one's not bad. So what are we going to have today? If you choose to touch on controversial topics in your videos, in Facebook posts, in anywhere, Twitter, be prepared for blowback from people who have strongly different opinions. That's not to say you shouldn't touch on those topics. Not at all. In fact, I do occasionally. But do be prepared for the blowback. In a bunch of videos lately, we've talked a lot about civility. One of the longtime banes of internet discourse of any kind is internet trolls. Now, an internet troll is someone who intentionally just picks a fight. He doesn't really have any interest in discussion. He just wants to get an emotional reaction and over and over again sometimes just picks a fight. Has no interest in real discussion. But be careful not to just label someone a troll because they've made a comment or asked a question that makes you angry or that brings up an emotional response. Sometimes we have strong reactions to things that we disagree with strongly. That doesn't mean the person is trolling you. Be prepared to defend the things that you say. That's the adult thing to do. Another bane of internet discourse is labeling. And mislabeling someone a troll when, in fact, they have asked you what is a legitimate question, that just shuts down conversation. So does calling them a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, a xenophobe. Anytime you start throwing labels on people, and it happens, conservatives calling people liberal idiots and things like that. As soon as you start throwing labels around, the discussion is over. Just quit. Walk away. There's nothing else going on. Labels in general are a lazy way to end a discussion. It means you don't really, if you're going to throw labels on people, it means you don't really want to discuss how they differ with you. Should have dried this out a little bit. It didn't need much drying time, but I packed it straight in and it's a little moist. Having trouble keeping it lit. So, election season coming up. We seem to have this question every time there's an election. And in fact, it's every 2 years now that we seem to have this coming up in state legislatures all the time. You need a state-issued ID to buy beer, to get a job, to drive a car, to buy a car, to rent a house, to rent or own, to rent an apartment, to own a house. There are lots of things that we require state-approved, state-issued IDs for. But we don't require state-issued ID to help determine whose finger is inches away from the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet. All right, another controversial topic, COVID. So earlier this last week, I saw some numbers that were interesting and surprising. I decided to get out on the web and dig around CDC and World Health Organization websites and see if I could make the numbers match up to what it was that I saw. And here's what I found. I'm going to read these so that I don't get the numbers wrong. So the U.S. population is approximately 330 million. If we put together 6 countries in Europe, we come up with a group of people that's just a little bit bigger. And those 6 countries that I saw put together were Germany, Britain, France, Italy, Spain, and Belgium. They have 336 million, just a little bit larger than the U.S. At the beginning of the week when I was looking at this, the approximate number of COVID tests that had been done in those 6 countries was 43 million. With a slightly smaller population, the U.S. has done 60 million. Again, at the beginning of the week, the numbers have changed. At that point, the approximate number of deaths from COVID in those 6 countries was 159,000. I'm gurgling a little bit. I forgot to bring out a pipe cleaner. So 159,000 in those 6 countries. The U.S. at that point had 158,000. Pretty comparable. Certainly within the statistical range of significance. When we look at the death rate per capita, the U.S. had a lower death rate than 4 of those 6 countries. The U.S. death rate sat at that time at 48 per 100,000. Only Germany, very low at 11, and France at 45, so 3 per 100,000 lower. Were lower than the U.S. The other 4 countries were higher. The U.S. death rate at the beginning of the week was 48 per 100,000. Now, if you look at the 3 highest states in the U.S., they are New Jersey with 178. That's almost 4 times the national average. New York with 167. That's 3 times the national average. And Massachusetts with 125, which is 2.5 times. Now, if you take those 3 states out of our numbers, the rest of the country is doing better than Europe. So why should the rest of us have to do the same things that those 3 states with the very high death rates, why should the rest of us have to be doing the same thing that they're doing? Just curious. A poll this week said that 52% of Americans think that the U.S. is doing worse in its COVID response than other countries. Given the numbers that I just shared with you, is that true? Or are we doing about comparable? Does that mean we're doing the best we could do? No, probably not. But are we doing worse than other countries? Who shapes that narrative? Amazing. Now back to debate and civility versus. It's not really versus, but civility and passion. There's nothing that says that you can't be passionate about things and still be civil. In 1858, the famous Lincoln-Douglas debates were going on, a series of 7 debates between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas. As Lincoln was running for a Senate in Illinois to take Douglas' seat, the topic was slavery. People sat for 3 hours for each of these debates. The format was very strict. 3 hours for these debates. People sat and stood to hear what these two men had to say, and they passionately disagreed with each other. Passionately. Nowadays, as soon as we see an opinion that we disagree with, or that touches our buttons, we either flame back at the person, or we unsubscribe, we turn off the video, we change the channel. But we consider ourselves superior to the people of 160 years ago. Well, that's all I've got today. Hope it gives you something to think about. Enjoy the rest of your day. I think I'm going to have another bowl. It's nice and cool out here. Maybe a little humid and sticky and rainy, but hey, it's not hot, finally. Y'all enjoy.